Hello and a warm welcome to the Old Mutual 2020 SuperFund Summit. I'm Gugulethu Mfupi and I have the pleasure of being your facilitator for today. Now, today does promise to be quite an auspicious occasion as we gather in a year where Old Mutual will celebrate its 175th birthday and SuperFund itself 35 years of existence in the industry. Now, this happens at quite a pertinent time given the global and economic environment that we're in. A technical recession unfolding in South Africa. The threats of a coronavirus and sluggish global growth, and most importantly, just muted contributions to pension funds from South Africans. This sets the backdrop for the conversation that we look to engage in today, understanding how it is that Old Mutual SuperFund meets the commitments and objectives of its members in order to retire comfortably and affordably. Now, we'll also look to expand on understanding what's happening within the investment climate, and most importantly, how we can get all of our members on track to meet the investment objectives. Now, for many of you, you might see that we do have an audience that's gathered with us today, and we're appreciative of your time as Old Mutual staff and consultants. But to those of you who are watching virtually, we appreciate your interaction as well with us today. Now, this comes on the back of having to cancel SuperFund events throughout the country this year on the back of confirmed cases of the coronavirus. Now, Old Mutual, as a responsible entity, takes the health, safety, and well-being of its staff and customers with the utmost of importance. As such, we've decided to record much of the presentations unfolding here in Cape Town and in Johannesburg and bringing them to you virtually. So you're not losing out on any of the insight, expert analysis, and most importantly, feedback that will be provided by our speakers here today. Now, to those of you who are intermediaries and members requiring to earn your CPD points, please do be sure to run through and pay careful attention to all of the speaker presentations that we have today. And most importantly, ensure to complete the questionnaire that will be made available following each presentation. But now that we've got the excitement going and, of course, looking forward to much of the questions that we hope to address, let's get the show on the road. This time, by understanding how it is that Old Mutual, as a sponsor, looks to continue with its ongoing support for SuperFund. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today to provide us with the opening and welcome. Prabashini was previously the Chief Financial Officer of the Old Mutual Mass and Foundation Cluster. A qualified actuary with more than 17 years of experience within the financial services industry, she's worked in a range of business roles and segments across multiple markets. Her diversified experience and business acumen have equipped her with a deep and broad understanding of changing customer expectations and, most importantly, how to address this in a world which is spurred by innovation and globalization. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us warmly welcome to the front of the stage for our opening address, the Managing Director of Old Mutual Corporate, Prabashini Moodley.
Hello, I'm Prabashini Moodley, and this is my first SuperFund Summit in my new role as the Managing Director of Old Mutual Corporate, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk to you today. It's a privilege to be part of a successful and industry-leading business. However, I must admit that before joining the retirement fund industry, I had the perception that this was an inflexible and mature business. However, I've been pleasantly surprised in finding that there are many opportunities in the retirement industry to innovate, improve member outcomes, and stay relevant for the future. You may have heard by now that 2020 marks Old Mutual's 175th birthday. A lot has changed since Old Mutual was founded in 1845. Yet, as time has passed and things have changed, politically, economically, and socially, Old Mutual has endured, building a strong and lasting legacy. This organization is built on sustainable, long-term planning. And that's the reason we're still here and still leading the industry. We adapt, we stay relevant, and we help to shape the future. More especially now, as we face COVID-19, not only as an industry, but as a country. The stability to weather the current turbulence while not losing sight of the future is crucial. COVID-19 is accelerating changes in the way we work, particularly around the use of technology. These changes were happening anyway, Add to this trends globally around the gig economy and different generational attitudes to work, and you will find that today it is the exception and certainly not the rule that someone retires at their first employer. With this comes the understanding that our industry needs to change. Industry leaders like SuperFund must lead that change. Umbrella funds are really well positioned to adapt to the changing world of work. An umbrella fund like the SuperFund is home to many different employers, in theory, making it easy to cater for new ways of working. There's still much work to be done here, but as an organization, we are focused on the future and excited about its possibilities. Old Mutual Corporate is the sponsor of the Old Mutual SuperFund, so our success is directly linked to the success of the SuperFund. Our vision as Old Mutual Corporate is to improve the lives of all in South Africa, and this includes the almost 500,000 SuperFund members and, by extension, all of their dependents. That comes with a double challenge, and it's one that our investment panel will unpack further. SuperFund prioritizes the retirement outcomes of its members and will never compromise on their investment returns. At the same time, SuperFund's default fund, the Absolute Secure Growth Portfolio, integrates environmental, social, and governance factors into its investment process. That Absolute Secure Growth Portfolio had 133.6 billion rands in funds under management at the end of 2019. Our aim is to protect and grow the SuperFund, and I'm pleased to report that we remain firmly on course in that respect. We care about our members, and we appreciate that behind every member is a real person, a person with concerns, hopes, and ambitions for their future. This fund exists to help each member achieve their best possible retirement outcome. That is why we continue to encourage members to contribute as much as they can afford towards their retirement funds, and to preserve their fund investments, even when they face the challenges of job losses or changes. We know that most members are not saving enough towards their retirement, and we know that we need to ensure more coverage for the fund. We will hear later from my team members, Malusi Ndlovu and Andrew Davison, who will share their research on this topic. When it comes to retirement outcomes, contributions matter and preservation matters. But before you even get there, one needs to understand the reality of most people's personal finances. They want to contribute more, but they simply don't believe they can afford to. This is where communication with members becomes so important. Communication provides a platform for education and for access to SuperFund's financial well-being program. Communication also enables the SuperFund to show its members that they have flexibility and choice when it comes to their retirement investments, more perhaps than many of them think they do. I know that this can be quite a delicate subject, especially for any intermediaries and member employers who might be watching. It's important to remember that when SuperFund communicates with your client or your employees, we're also talking to our members. We care about them, and we want to work together with you to ensure that we do great things every day and that they get the best care possible. That care is underpinned by consistency, consistent messaging, consistent investment returns, reliable service, and trustworthy governance. Old Mutual's recent customer satisfaction survey highlighted unprompted feedback from clients about the strength and quality of our people. Old Mutual Corporate offers a large number of consultants with real depth of experience and expertise, matched with the kind of institutional knowledge that money simply can't buy. The past 175 years has taught us that a lot can change in a very short space of time. In the wrong hands, a fortune built over decades can be lost in days. Knowing this, it should be comforting to know that Old Mutual SuperFund has received clean audits every year since its inception. That unwavering commitment to good governance carries through in everything we do, including Old Mutual Corporate's work in investing members' retirement savings. From an investment returns perspective, I look forward to hearing from our investment panel. Similarly, when it comes to good governance, I will let SuperFund Management Board Chairperson Bertie van Wyk, Deputy Chair Wahida Parker, and Principal Officer Fiona Reynolds speak for themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, 2020 marks a significant milestone in Old Mutual's heritage, and the message should be clear. Old Mutual SuperFund, through its sponsor, Old Mutual Corporate, has its eyes firmly on the future. We will weather the current turbulence and continue to demonstrate care, commitment, and consistency, innovate, and dare to do what it takes to help SuperFund's members secure the financial future they desire. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce two of my team members. Firstly, Malusi Ndlovu. Malusi is the head of Old Mutual Corporate Consultants. Joining Malusi is Andrew Davison. Andrew is the head of advice at Old Mutual Corporate Consultants.
Hello, everyone. Andrew and I are going to do a bit of a dual presentation, asking the question, are you on track? The idea of working for 30 years and then earning a well-deserved retirement is quite a common expectation in most societies, as it is in ours. And yet, everywhere we look, the mechanisms that make retirement possible are under pressure. If you look at the developed world, there is an unfolding crisis of defined benefit funds that are underfunded, and they're stepping away at capital, they're stepping away at growth, and they're stepping away at living standards. South Africa is no different. According to National Treasury, only 6% of people who belong to retirement funds achieve a comfortable retirement. Our stats that we've done as well also bear this out, and we'll share them with you later on. These numbers should jar us, they should shock us, they should mobilize us into action. What makes this worse is that achieving a good retirement outcome is actually quite simple. Let's meet William. William has just turned 90. William started working all the way back in 1955 when he was 25 years old. William started earning a salary that grew with inflation, and he put away about 14% of the salary towards a retirement fund. And this was invested in assets that were available at the time in the retirement fund industry. When he reached retirement in 1995, just after we attained our freedom, William was able to achieve a replacement ratio of 72%. He put away all the capital that he had into a living annuity, and his pension, the day after he retired, was 72% of the salary that he had earned in the last month of working. This pension then grew, as you can see in the orange blocks, with inflation, and up until about 5 years ago, it was growing, and it was actually quite a good retirement story. His financial planning had suggested that he would live for another 20 years, up until 85, so the numbers were not too far off. And even today, at the ripe age of 90, William still is able to earn an income. So I would call this a decent retirement plan. We can also track William's capital and how it has grown. We are looking at capital here as a multiple of annual salary. It's quite a simple concept. If you earn 200,000 rands and you have retirement capital of 400,000, your multiple of annual salary is 2, and so on. So we can see his multiple of annual salary grew as he was saving, and when he retired, he had a multiple of annual salary of 9.6. And obviously, once he started drawing down on that capital, his multiple of annual salary went down. Even at the age of 90, William still has enough capital to last him a year. So this is a pretty decent retirement plan. And it's simple. It's achievable. Putting away 14% of your salary towards retirement is not undoable. The returns that William earned are returns that were available in the market. And the fees that were charged are standard fees that were charged in the market. So this is something that anyone can achieve. So why are there no more Williams? Why is it only 6% of people retire comfortably? And I've been in this industry for quite a long time. and I've been a trustee and I've advised a number of retirement funds. And I know that often one can start out being highly energized and enthused, looking at the fact that we have to do something. There's a problem, there's an outcomes problem. And then you get to the part of the meeting where reality sets in. So many reasons and so many excuses as to why this is not possible. And if I had to ask all of you here why it's not possible that we have more Williams, you also would come up with 20 additional reasons. And this can be quite deflating. But it turns out that you can separate these reasons into things that are within your control as a management committee of a fund and things that are not within your control. On the left, for instance, are all the things that, as the management of a fund, you can do something about, and they have a direct bearing on the outcomes or the multiple of annual salary that people achieve. On the right are things that you have less control over. So for the first time, we have a way of measuring what we can do and how it has an impact on outcomes. And Andrew will tell us a little bit about this.
Thanks, Malusi. So as Malusi said, one of the difficulties is pinpointing exactly why people don't have enough money when they get to retirement. And as consultants to retirement funds, we needed a tool to help us to identify which are those issues that affect the individual members and which are those that are actually in the control of the decision makers of the fund. And we wanted to, obviously, as the consultant to the funds, we wanted to be able to focus on the portion that was under the control of the decision makers, rather than where individuals were making bad decisions basically when they left the fund or maybe at retirement. So we developed this concept based on this concept that Malusi has already introduced called multiples of annual salary. And what you're looking at here is just an indication of the kind of path that a person needs to follow to be able to be on the right path to a comfortable retirement. So let me just highlight these 3 lines first of all. Basically, this is if you have a living annuity at retirement, what is the multiple of your annual salary that you would need to have at age 65 to be able to afford a pension of 70% of your final salary? Okay, which is roughly the kind of target that we are generally looking to achieve. In Malusi's example of William, he got to a 72%, but really we're generally looking at 70 to 75%. So in this example, we're using 70%. What you can see is that those multiples are fairly onerous. If you are a single male, you need nearly 17 times your annual salary to be able to afford a pension of 70% of that same salary. Okay? If you're a single female, you need even more. And the reason is that on average, females do live longer than males, so they need more capital to provide the same level of pension because it's going to need to last a few years longer. And then if you're a couple, you need even more, obviously, because you need to worry about whichever of the two of you survives the longest. So you need a little bit more capital, over 20 times. Okay? If we then look at a slightly different type of annuity, okay? So this is now a with-profit annuity. Both of these are products that are available at retirement to convert a lump sum into a monthly pension. The first type is the most common by far, the living annuity, but there is this with profit that is also available. And we prefer to use this because what this does is this is where a life company provides, like Old Mutual or Sanlam or any other life company, would provide you with a pension for that amount of capital. And what you can see here is that the multiples are quite a lot lower than for a living annuity. And for a lot of people, this seems quite surprising. But the reason is that a life company doesn't have to know exactly how long you're going to live as an individual. All we need to do is guess on average how long people are going to live. Because we can use the capital for those people that don't live very long to subsidize those people that do live a bit longer. So what that means is that the multiples that you need for the same level of pension, the same 70%, are actually a little bit lower. They're still quite onerous though. For a single male, it's still 9 times your annual salary. So if you are earning 500,000 Rand a year, that is 4.5 million Rand that you need to provide a pension that is 70% of that salary that you were earning. Okay.
Well, Andrew, not everyone here in the audience is close to retirement. If I'm sitting in the audience and I'm 45 years old, what is the multiple of annual salary that I need right now in order for me to be on track?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because the whole concept of the journey of retirement is that it's not all about the end point, as you've pinpointed now. It's about, at any milestone along the journey, what do you have? So as a 45-year-old, for a male to be on track towards a with-profit annuity, you would need 2.4 times. What that would mean is that you were then on the path so that if you continued doing all the right things, you'd end up at 9 times. Okay? So what's powerful about what you've just asked, though, Malusi, is that we can work out for any member of a retirement fund, based on how long they've been a member of that fund, what multiple of their annual salary should they already have accumulated. So if they've been a member for 5 years, we know that they should have, for example, 1 times their annual salary. And if they don't have 1 times, they are not on track. They are not on this path towards a sound retirement. Okay? So this concept is exactly what we've then used to analyze a retirement fund and its membership to figure out, is that fund doing a good job for the members? Is it effective in delivering good retirement outcomes? So let me show you how that works in practice. So this is an example of what we call our on-track analysis. It's a consulting tool. It's delivered by a consultant because it is a tool that facilitates the right conversation with the decision makers about what can they do to improve the outcomes that are being delivered by the fund. So what you can see here is that we've got a particular fund, and we break the membership down according to the number of years that they've been a member of that fund. Okay? So this group over here have 0 years of service. So what that actually means is that they have between 0 and 11 months. So it's everybody in their first year of service or employment at that company. This is the next group, which is obviously people that have been there about a year, 2 years, etc. In this example fund that we've used here, the longest membership is 4 years of membership. The reason is, 4 years ago, this fund moved into SuperFund. So we are looking at their track record while they've been in the SuperFund umbrella. Okay. The next thing we do is we say, okay, we first need to work out, is this fund actually designed to deliver a 70% replacement ratio? Okay. And those are the 2 lines that you see over here. So in an ideal world, the right structure of fund would be on the dotted line. Okay, that's what we ideally want to be able to deliver a 70%. This particular fund is the black solid line. What you can see is the black solid line is below the dotted line. What that means is that this fund, in terms of the design of the fund, the retirement age, the default contribution percentage, the investment strategy, it is not designed to deliver a 70% replacement ratio. What we so often see is that funds will say to their members, we are targeting a 70% replacement ratio. They'll put it in their investment policy statement. They'll put it in the communication. They'll put it in their member booklet. But in reality, we see so many funds are not designed to do that. It's literally mis-selling. They're telling the members something. They're not even designed to deliver that for those members.
And this is a very powerful concept, because often when people are putting the desired replacement ratio in, they look only at the investment strategy, they look at the IPS, but actually you've got to look at everything else. You've got to look at the contributions, you've got to look at the fees, you've got to look at all the things that are part of the fund design so that you can see what the fund's line and glide path actually looks like. And that's a critical change in perspective that OnTrack brings, which funds need to be aware of.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And as I say, so often fund decision makers, whether they're trustees or management committees, have literally been in the dark about whether they've designed the fund in the right way. So this is the first very powerful thing about our analysis, is that it tells them have they designed the fund appropriately? Okay. The second part, just as important, is to say, that's fine. The fund design is one part of the equation. The other part is, are the members actually achieving what the fund is designed to deliver? Okay. So that is where these colored bars come into play. Okay. So the colored bars is the range of outcomes for the members with that length of past service. So if we take this group over here, this is people with 1 year of service, between 1 and 2 effectively. And the bottom end of the orange bar is the worst case scenario. Okay, 90% of the members do fit between the bottom of the orange and the top of the blue. There are a couple of outliers outside of that, but most of the members sit in the range of this colored block. Okay, the triangle, the white triangle, is the median member. So on average, that's what this group of members is achieving. So what you can see at a glance, and that's again what's powerful about a graph like this, is literally you can see at a glance, this fund is not getting the members to the level of savings that they've even designed, let alone what's ideal for a 70% replacement ratio. Okay, so now we need to say, what is the reason for this? Why is this fund not delivering the goods? Because quite frankly, this is not a good picture. It's not the kind of picture that I would want to see as a member of a retirement fund. Because what it means is that the fund is not actually doing a good job at all. So this analysis that we do is literally a fund health check. And what's amazing for me is that we've been rolling this out since the beginning of 2019 to our clients. And even in cases where we say to a client, you are doing a terrible job, they are not taking it in a defensive way. They are not saying, well, this is obviously rubbish analysis. They're saying, what can we do to improve the picture? So in other words, it's changing the conversation. And again, we think that this is much more powerful than, have we got the right asset manager? Which is often the focus of a lot of trustees and management committee boards, but actually it's the wrong focus. So this is an example of the analysis. What we're going to do now is just look at a few real life cases of some clients that we've analyzed and how are they doing on this on-track analysis. So this is the first example. What you can see is this is a dramatically different picture to the picture I showed you in the previous graph. So this is one of the best funds we've analyzed. Okay, so why is it such a great fund? Well, the first thing is you would notice that the black line is actually above the dotted line. Remember, the dotted line is the ideal target, and the black line is what the fund is designed to deliver. So the fund is designed to deliver an even better replacement ratio than 70%. Brilliant. Okay, they are on track in terms of the design of the fund to deliver great outcomes for their members. But not only that, if you look at the white triangles, the second part of the equation that I mentioned, the members are actually being taken along on this journey. The fund is delivering the level of savings that the members expect based on the design. So as a result, because they are then above the dotted line, on average, these members are on track for a great retirement outcome based on their membership in this fund. And that applies to all of the cohorts. Whether you are a brand new member of the fund or whether you've been there for 5 years, you can rest assured that this fund is delivering the goods for you. So wouldn't you as a member want to be a member of a fund like this? Because literally you know that you are on track. Obviously now, there is a part of the journey that you need to fulfill. And that is, when you leave this employer, you need to preserve your savings. Because if you don't, you're literally undoing all the good that was done while you were a member of this fund.
What's also quite fascinating about this fund is you'll see how tight the spread is around the black line. So you can see that members are not achieving outcomes that are too different to what the fund is designed to do. All across the cohorts, the spread of the membership's outcomes is actually quite close to the black line. And that's a function of a number of things, such as the lack of member choice that may be in this fund, so that members are not getting a lot of opportunity to deviate from the design of the fund. The contributions that they put in and the investment returns that they achieve are very much aligned with the design of the fund because they don't have a lot of choice. So this is something that we find in a lot of instances, that often giving member choice, particularly where it's not properly supported, can result in bad outcomes where members start to spread too much around the design of the fund, often below the line that the fund is designed to achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Malusi. That's a great point, because what we found so valuable about this analysis is that it gives us insights which we kind of knew already, but now the data is supporting that. So one of the interesting things about what Malusi's mentioned is that we've seen in funds that don't offer member choice, they tend to have a better on-track analysis. And that's because members are not undoing the good that would be in place if they just sat in the default, which is often a pretty solid default. They're making choices that detract from their outcomes. In this case, this fund doesn't offer member choice. And actually, the result is that members are going along for the ride and not making poor choices. Let's take another look at another fund now. So this is a different example. And you can see here, this is, again, not a great fund. Okay? The major problem, though, with this fund is that the black line is not tracking the dotted line. And that means that, in fact, this fund is poorly designed. So the first thing that this fund needs to do is they need to consider, as a board of trustees or as a manco, do they need to redesign certain aspects of the fund? It could be, for example, that their retirement age is too low. Maybe they have a retirement age of 60, and that could be pushed out to 65. We've seen this already on funds that we've done the on-track analysis for, where they've seen this big gap between the black solid line and the dotted line. They've said, well, what can we do? And one of the easy actions, it's not always so easy, but it's a simple action, is to raise the retirement age, push it out a few years. It gives more time for the members to accumulate the level of assets that they need. Okay? Or it could be the contribution rate. Or maybe, in some cases, the default investment strategy is just too conservative. So it's not getting the members to where they need to be. But what you can see is that the second part of the equation is, are the members at least getting the level of benefits that have been designed to be delivered by the fund? And in this case, the white triangles are actually roughly in line with the black line. Okay, so at least, remember, if you think back to the first example I showed you, the white triangles were not even making it to the black line, which is where the fund was designed to deliver. But here you can actually see that at least the fund is delivering based on the design. The problem, though, with this fund is the design. Let's take a look at the third example that we've got. And what you can see here is this is obviously a really poor case. Okay, so you would not want to be a member of this fund because literally it does not deserve the name of retirement fund because it's not delivering any retirement benefits worth speaking of. Okay, first of all, the design is flawed. There is a gap between the two lines there. That's very obvious. But even then, relative to the line, the black line, which is what the fund is designed to do, the members are not even getting to that level. So to Malusi's earlier point, in this case, there is a very low dispersion of outcomes, but they're so poor that there's no point in worrying about that. Okay.
And what we often hear with funds that are like this, when we talk to the boards of trustees or the management committees, is, well, at least the members are saving something. But I think realistically, we've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard and say, if members are in a retirement fund, let's make sure we put them in the best possible position to achieve a good retirement outcome. And it's not enough to simply say, well, at least there's some kind of savings that's there.
Yeah. So what we've also done as part of the analysis is the report that the client gets actually shows them how their fund ranks, because we actually give a ranking in terms of the on-track analysis, how they rank against other funds in our database. And we found that's quite a powerful nudge factor as well, because people don't, or companies don't want to have an inferior fund. So we find that when we show them that they're at the bottom of the pile, particularly in their particular industry, in terms of their retirement fund, that is a nudge factor to want to improve and change the outcomes, change the design, whatever the case might be. So very, very valuable analysis. Let's move on from on track now. Basically, what we're doing now is we're just going to give you some sense of the kind of outcomes that we've seen in SuperFund. Obviously, SuperFund is a very nice, large database. We've got nearly 500,000 members that we can analyze, which is a significant portion of the South African industry. Lots of different employers. We've got almost 6,000 employers across different industries. So it's a very valuable database in terms of gaining insights about the retirement savings readiness of South Africans. And again, it's not different from other large umbrella funds that are out there. So it's a very representative sample of what's going on in South Africans' retirement planning. So this is the pension fund. We're using this concept that we've been talking about throughout the presentation of multiples of annual salary. And what we're wanting to do is show you the progression of multiples of members within SuperFund. Now remember, what we want here is that people would start at zero when they start out in their late teens or early 20s, but they need to be able to get to the multiples that we've set of the black line there is for males, and the pink line is for females. So that's the 9 times versus the 9.7 times at age 65. Okay? And the pink lines are the females in the pension fund, and the black lines are the males. So what you can see, first of all, is that on average, these are the lines over here, on average, people are not getting to the multiple that they need. Okay? They need 9 to 10 times. They're getting to about 3. Okay. That's obviously problematic. That's not enough. It is based only on the assets that we can see inside SuperFund. But we know that in most people's case, this is actually the majority of their savings. They don't have substantial other savings. Okay? You can see there, unfortunately, the pink line is below the black line. Okay? What that means is that on average, females are worse off than males in terms of the multiples they're accumulating. And remember, they need more, they've got less. So it's a double whammy effect. They are significantly worse off than their male peers in this fund. We've also highlighted the top 10%. So the best 10% are the lighter colored lines. So the gray and the light pink, that's the top 10% of people in terms of their accumulation of multiples of annual salary. And what you can see is they are better off. In the case of the males, they're actually getting to the 9 times. The females, slightly less. Similar pattern to what we see on average. We've also highlighted in the blocks the contribution rates that are being made by those members towards their savings. Okay? So what you can see is the average around about 12 to 13 for females, 13 to 13.5 for males. So that's part of the problem. Females need to contribute more as a percentage of salary because they live longer. They're not going to get a better investment return because they're female. Okay? So they are subject to the same investment environment. The only lever they have, there are 2 actually, one is contribution rate or retire later. But retire later is not always in your control as an individual member. Okay? So the main one is contribution rate. So females can't afford, from a retirement point of view, to be contributing less. Unfortunately, often they do have lower salaries, which is why they can't afford, from a current standard of living point of view, to contribute more. But what you can see also is the top 10%. There's a reason why they're the top 10%. They're contributing significantly more as a percentage of their salary. In most cases, it's about 4%, 3.5% to 4% more. That's why they've got a much better outcome. Okay, so it's not by accident that they're ending up in the top 10%. And that's the pension fund. Malusi, do you want to maybe talk to us about the Provident Fund?
Yeah, that's right. So I think firstly, before we even analyze the SuperFund outcomes, one of the things we notice whenever we look at Provident Funds, by any cut-off data across the industry, is that often they have poorer outcomes. They contribute less, they've got poor investment returns, they've got higher fees, and as a result, members in Provident Funds generally have worse outcomes. There is nothing inherent in the design of Provident Funds that should make this the case. Because remember, they're subject to the same contribution deductibility, they're subject to the same requirements for annuitization, they have access to the same investment returns. So in SuperFund, as you'll see, we don't have that different a picture. the first thing you'll see is that the lines are much lower than what we saw in the pension fund. So the multiples of annual salary that members of the Provident Fund are achieving throughout their lifetime in SuperFund, as with any other part of the industry, are much lower than members of the pension fund. This is true on average, but it's also true even when you look at the top 10% of members. So the top 10% Provident Fund members are only achieving multiples of annual salary of around 6 or 5 against a target of 9+. And again, the picture is the same. If you look at the reasons why they're achieving these higher multiples of annual salary compared to the average. So these are the contribution rates that the different members are contributing. At the bottom, you've got the average member who's contributing around 9 or 10%, and they are the ones who are achieving a very low multiple of annual salary. The top 10% of members who are sitting up there close to 6 are contributing around 14 to 16%. So we can see that the main driver of this higher multiple of annual salary for the top 10% of members, whether you're looking at pension or Provident Fund, is primarily the contribution rate. So it's really important that those contribution rates are looked at. And we must always remember that this is not a SuperFund problem. This is an industry problem. The people who are making decisions about these contribution rates, it's not SuperFund, it's not Old Mutual, it's not any provider. It's the people who are sitting around the table as the management committee and the board of trustees. So we've got to think about how do we make sure that Provident Fund members can start achieving better outcomes, at the very least matching the outcomes of pension fund members.
So Malusi, just a point about Provident funds, you've touched on it already, and that is that in general, a Provident Fund does not seem to be doing as good a job as a pension fund. There's no reason for that, as Malusi has said, but what we've seen from our on-track analysis that we talked about just now is that Provident funds are getting much worse ratings. They are not designed to deliver the benefits that members need. So I think this is an important thing that we need to change. A Provident Fund seems to have almost been used as a stopgap. We'll put one in place. We're not very serious about a retirement arrangement for our members, but we'll put a Provident Fund in. If we're serious, we'll do a pension fund. That's ludicrous thinking. So we want people to change their mindset around Provident Funds. There's no reason why they shouldn't deliver the same sort of benefits as a pension fund. Okay, so now just taking a slightly different look, same data set. This is for both pension and Provident combined, but we just thought we'd look at two other features. First of all, males, and then secondly, salary band, okay? So if you look at that top box over there, those are different salary bands, okay? So the first salary band there is, salary band number 1, is people earning less than 10,000 Rand a month, okay? Salary band number 5 is people earning above 80,000 Rand a month. Okay, and obviously 2, 3, and 4 are in between that. So the highest salary band has obviously the lowest number of members. You can see there those blocks are the number of members or the membership per salary band. You can see by far the majority of low-income earners are sitting in a Provident Fund. Okay. Very few members are sitting above the 80,000 Rand per month salary, although there are roughly the same sort of numbers between the pension and the Provident Fund. So what we're then showing you over here is those same accumulations from age 18 all the way through to 65, but now broken down by those salary bands. So the first thing you notice is that the orange band, which is the lowest salary band, those earning less than 10,000 Rand a month, very low outcomes. Those people are getting to about 1.5 times annual salary. I mean, really, that's not going to get them very far. Now, what is important about this salary band is that they are the band where the state old age grant actually is an important part of their retirement planning. Okay, if you're earning below 10,000 Rand a month and you don't have a lot of savings, you do qualify in terms of the means test. So if you're going to get 1,800 Rand a month, you were only earning, let's say, 5,000, that's already a 36% replacement ratio. If you've got a little bit of savings on top of that, you can maybe add another 20 or 30%. You're actually very close to a 70% replacement ratio. So we mustn't forget that. It is an important part of this landscape. What's also interesting is that the other salary bands, all 4 of the other bands, which is obviously people earning more than 10,000, but in the case of the green bar there, people earning above 80, there's very little difference between the salary bands. You would expect that people earning 80,000 Rand a month or more would be significantly better off in terms of their retirement planning than someone earning between 10 and 20, which is obviously the grey bar. So you can see that's not actually the case. So earning more does not necessarily mean people are better equipped for retirement. All that means is that they live a more lavish lifestyle. And that we know, as soon as any of us gets an increase in our salary, immediately when we think we were going to have a whole lot of extra money a month in, that extra money seems to have disappeared and our lifestyle has taken a little bit of an increase. And that happens throughout our lifetime. So unfortunately, we never save more, we spend more.
And I think that's a very important point, because the way this analysis is done is that it's looking at multiple of annual salary. So the more you earn, the more income you need to be able to replace when you retire. So earning more does not automatically mean that you're going to be better off in terms of your retirement savings. What matters is how much of that salary you're actually putting away, which is why the contribution rates remain very important, regardless of the level at which you're earning.
Yeah, exactly. So it is, and that's what's valuable about the multiples, is that it's all relative to your salary. So the other nice thing about the multiple of annual salary is it's very easy for anyone to calculate that for themselves. You just need to know what you've got saved. You divide that by what your annual salary is, and you've got your multiple. So if you know that you should have by age 45, 2.4 times, and you are 45, have you got 2.4 times as an individual? If not, you should be doing something to try to get yourself on the line, on the journey, okay, on track. That block there just shows you the average monthly salaries across the pension and the Provident. You can see average monthly salary in the pension fund's pretty healthy, 26,000 Rand. For the Provident, only 14. So again, you can see generally, the Provident Fund does have a lot more lower income workers in it. Malusi, you want to take us through the females?
So this is the last cut of data for SuperFund, and if you look at it, it's the females and the multiples of annual salary that they're receiving. And this is also cut by different salary bands, with the lowest salary band of people earning less than 10,000 Rand being the orange line, and people earning the highest, which is the green line, which is above 80,000 Rand. And you can see the picture and the pattern is not that much different to what we saw with the males. The people earning the least have the least accumulation of multiple of annual salary, and this is a problem. But of course, the state old age pension is there to supplement their replacement ratios. And for people who are earning above 10,000 Rands, they more or less are landing at the same level of multiple of annual salary, which is a problem. But again, here, what you'll see is that on average, the graphs for the females are lower than the graphs for the males. And this is a problem, as Andrew has highlighted. Females tend to live longer, so they do need to be saving up a lot more. They do need to be targeting a higher multiple of annual salary at the date of retirement for them to have a secure retirement. And obviously, there are many reasons why female earn less. Some of them have to do with taking breaks for raising children throughout their working lives. And we also have a systemic issue with females earning less, even for the same work. So these are things that female members across the industry are faced with, which means they have to supplement their retirement savings a lot more than males. Not only are they earning less, not only are they saving for a shorter period of time because of absences, but actually they need more when they get to retirement. And I think before we move off the SuperFund data, one of the important things to realize here is that SuperFund has got one of the highest average assets per member. So if and when we start adding other umbrella funds into this picture, the likelihood is that these graphs and these progressions are going to end up being a lot worse.
Yeah, Malusi, so I mean, you mentioned the gender salary gap, so you can see there. Remember, if you look back at the previous graph, we were talking about 26,000 in the pension and 14 for males. For females, it's 20 and 12. So there is definitely a salary gap there, obviously, that is contributing to the challenges that females have in terms of saving for retirement. Malusi, you touched on the fact that, you know, that we do expect that this data might look worse if we add other funds to it. And The one thing we have noticed from the on-track analysis, we've analyzed a number of funds, quite a few of them inside SuperFund, others standalone, other umbrella funds. We're seeing that actually SuperFund, the ratings, those scores that we assign, some of the best funds that we've analyzed have been inside SuperFund. So that's encouraging, obviously, because it means that we know that the structure of SuperFund is conducive to delivering great benefits. But even so, within SuperFund, we've seen some very poor cases. And that's where, as consultants, we think there's an important job to be done to improve those outcomes. The other thing that we had a look at, just to finish off, is those members approaching retirement. These are the guys that are often quite vulnerable because they, for the first time, realize they haven't got enough money. They're also vulnerable from a point of view of investment returns because it's at a time when their assets are at the peak, pretty much. Because remember, they're ending off on their accumulation phase and they're just before they're starting to deplete their capital as they draw on income. So it's generally the peak of people's savings. And so they are very vulnerable to market corrections like we've been experiencing, unfortunately, over the last few weeks because of the coronavirus. What we've analyzed in terms of this membership group is that these are the outcomes in terms of multiples of annual salary, again, just to be consistent. So there's the color code over there. So blue is the percentage of members within a year of retirement, so very close. They don't have a lot of time to do anything else about their retirement plan now, other than the choice that they need to make around living versus with-profit annuity or any other kind of annuity. But 67, 2/3 of the fund, of the members, have a multiple of 3 or less. Remember, they need 9 to 10, depending on whether they're male or female. So this is people that are in trouble. They're probably going to end up with about a 20% replacement ratio. Okay, if they were earning 10,000 Rand a month, they're going to get a pension of 2,000. That's not enough. No one can suddenly live on 20% of what they were getting while they were working. The people that are looking quite rosy are the ones in the pink. Okay. In this case, less than a year to go till retirement, only 8% of members have got a multiple of 9 or more. Okay. And you can see the pattern doesn't change very much for any members within 5 years of retirement. Okay, so this is the group here, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years to retirement. So the picture is not dramatically different. In fact, it's almost identical. Okay, if we look at the Provident, that's in the pension fund. If we look at the Provident, and remember, those were for males and females. In the Provident, it is worse, as we've already highlighted. So you can see there 80%, 4 out of every 5 Provident Fund members are looking at a replacement ratio of 20% or less. Okay, only 4% here are looking at a replacement ratio of something around 70%. Okay.
And these stats are quite powerful because we've heard in the industry, particularly from National Treasury, that only 6% of people who are in retirement funds retire comfortably. What this shows is that stats is probably right. So we are finding that between 4 and 8% of people within 1 year of retirement are on track. So it shows that this is a real problem in the industry and we do need to address it.
Yeah. Again, we only are looking at what people have saved in SuperFund. It could be that they have other assets, but as we know, that is generally quite limited. And it's not going to dramatically alter this picture, unfortunately, particularly because the preservation rates are so low. We also did some analysis of SuperFund in terms of preservation rates. In the 20s, age 20, the percentage of people taking cash when they change jobs out of SuperFund is 90% plus. But even in the 50s, when people, surely it's already dawned on them that they might get to retirement, we are still seeing that when they change jobs, 50% of the capital gets taken out of the fund. And this is people in their 50s with very limited time to play catch up. Okay, Malusi.
So I think, when we talk about on track, it's just a tool to analyze outcomes. It doesn't show us anything that we don't know. All it does is it casts the data in a different way and it gives us insights that we may not have had before. at the end of the day, the things that need to be done in order to improve outcomes are fairly intuitive. And for us, we've come up with these 6 levers that any retirement fund or any fund manco or any consultant can use to try and improve the outcomes of the retirement fund they're looking at. Obviously, the first one is contribution rates. It's not a magic thing. What you put in is what you get out. Our recommendation is that at least 15% of a person's salary should be going towards retirement funding. This is after deducting risk contributions. This is after deducting costs. We saw with William in the example earlier that he contributed 14% and was still able to achieve a pretty good retirement. That's because he contributed consistently and he earned quite high returns during the time that he was saving. If we look at the industry levels of contribution rates, they're sitting at about 12 to 13%. So that should tell you already there's a problem. This is something that all retirement funds should be looking at and seeing how they can remedy. The second one is the investment growth. And this is quite a topical one, especially in the times we're living in now when we've seen significant corrections in the market over the last few weeks, as Andrew has said. And here there are 2 things to look at. The first one is the design. Every fund default retirement investment portfolio should be targeting at least CPI plus 5%. Now, SuperFund itself has got some pretty good defaults, which do target CPI plus 5%, but there are a number of employers within SuperFund who are sitting in customized investment portfolios, and obviously they are standalone retirement funds, and those investment portfolios should be tested against the benchmark of a target of CPI plus 5. The second thing to look at within the investment returns is how they're performing. And this is where the funds should hold the investment managers to account. The third lever to pull is the retirement age. And this is one that I know a lot of retirement funds don't have a lot of control over because it gets set by whoever the employer is. And, it's quite a straightforward equation. The later you retire, the less time you have to be spending your retirement capital, and the more time you have to be contributing towards that retirement capital. Now, many employers in South Africa are understandably reluctant to increase retirement age because of the youth unemployment problem we're facing. But I think if there is an opportunity to review retirement age, it should be reviewed upwards rather than downwards. The fourth lever is preservation. As Andrew has mentioned, we are seeing that for members who are in their 20s, 90% of the time of the money that they take out of the fund goes towards cash as opposed to going towards other retirement funds or going towards investment products. This is a problem. If you start to look at the entire industry, between 50% and 2/3 of money that comes out of retirement funds doesn't go into a financial product or to another retirement fund. It goes towards cash. And this is a problem because pressing the reset button on your retirement savings can be a significant detractor towards achieving a good retirement outcome. And what funds can do over here is they can start to monitor the preservation rates of their members. They can start to be interested, looking at what is the level of preservation for people who are exiting our retirement funds. Why are people not preserving when they leave? Ask the people who've left. Run surveys, understand what is happening. We had a client that we consult to where it had a number of different pay points. And we found that in one of the pay points, the preservation rates were particularly low. Everywhere else, there was quite a high level of preservation as people were exiting the employer. We did a little bit of digging with the permission of the employer, obviously, and we found that the HR department at that pay point or at that work site was basically pre-filling the forms and choosing the cash option for members because they just assume that that's what members would want. So by changing something like that in the process, one can have a significant impact on the retirement outcomes by looking at preservation. And pensionable salary is the other lever. So this is a relic of a bygone era. There is no reason for us to be talking about pensionable salary at all. If your reference salary in your retirement fund is still pensionable salary, you could be measuring against the wrong thing. All references have to be against cost to company. And the first thing that a fund should be doing is saying, what is the contribution rate and what is the replacement ratio relative to cost to company? Because that is already a wake-up call and it shows you what it is that you're targeting and whether that's problematic or not and needs to be changed. And obviously the last one is converting a lump sum into an income at retirement. And this is a very important decision because if the wrong choice is made over here, right at the end of the person's savings cycle. It can undo a whole lifetime's worth of good decisions. And retirement funds should be looking at not only putting in place a default annuity option, but actually what is the take-up rate? How is it performing? Are there other default annuity providers out there who can provide better? And these are the things that we encourage consultants and members and retirement fund MENCO members, as well as boards of trustees, to be looking at. We've also just combined these into a number of interventions that one can look at. Andrew, if you just want to move on. So there's a number of things that management committees can look at, and I just want to highlight three that I think are really powerful. The first one is auto-escalation. We understand that when it comes to contribution rates, it's not always easy to just increase the contribution rates overnight because people are very conscious of their take-home pay. What we found works quite well is where the contribution rates get increased every year by, say, 1%. So at salary increase dates, instead of increasing the take-home pay by 6%, you increase that by 5%, and the other 1% goes towards retirement funding up until the point where the default contribution in the retirement fund is sitting at 15%. What we've also found works quite well in terms of also escalation is where you've got a very high level of turnover in membership. Just open up a new default contribution rate for the members that are coming in. And as the members churn in and out of that fund, within a few years, you'll have the bulk of members sitting at the right contribution rate, which is 15%. The other one that's quite important, and we've already touched on it, is monitoring the choices that members make. Offering investment choice and offering contribution choice generally detracts from value because people generally choose against what is in their best interest. So the funds have to monitor the decisions that are being made. They have to provide the right support, the right guidance, and sometimes even advice so that if members are making choices around contributions and investment strategies, they are well informed and they're not doing anything that's going to detract from value. And then I think if there's one key takeaway for me from this whole presentation is that it's important for funds, whether they are management committees of sub-funds in an umbrella or whether they are boards of trustees, to be measuring the right things. We found that the bulk of the time that funds spend is on the administration issues. So are my claims being paid on time? Are the contributions being invested in the right time? Those things are important, but they're hygiene factors. The bulk of the conversation needs to be around outcomes. It needs to be around the 6 levers and whether or not the fund is designed appropriately. And I hope that what we've shown you today can start to jog the mind around how we can make a significant contribution in the industry around improving outcomes.
So Malusi, I mean, one of the things that I think is very important about what we've said today is we have focused on some of the shortcomings. We've focused on the fact that in many cases, as a retirement fund industry, we're not getting it right. But I will say that we do very strongly believe that retirement funds are a very valuable benefit that people often underappreciate. You know, a good, well-run retirement fund with a solid investment strategy, the right design, obviously something that's got the on-track analysis that we did, that we showed you earlier, that is actually a solid rating. It's such a valuable benefit for a member. The costs are far lower than what they could get in their own retail capacity. If we can just do some of these things, pull some of these levers, adjust things, small incremental changes, we can make a huge difference to a lot of people's retirement outcomes. Thank you very much.